Writing in the media, recap. So this is what we're going to cover, although I am just going to say first of all that I have made this presentation in Canva to really give it a go and to see how it worked out. So I'm hoping it's going to be fairly smooth, but yeah, let's see how it works. So this is what I'm going to cover. We're going to talk through the module aims and how you've covered them. We're also going to, as part of those module aims, draw out what the learning outcomes are and where you've absolutely met those. And then I'm going to go through what the assignments are and what you need to submit. Okay, so these are the module aims. So this is what you'll find on Moodle if you look into sort of like the module handbook. So as you can see, this module is aimed at somebody who wants to go into the media, essentially. But not just those people, also those of you who are perhaps taking this as a complete change from other modules that you're doing. And, you know, it could be that you've just got a general interest. It also enables students, particularly those taking ELL, English Language and Linguistics, to actually put into practice an awful lot of the different theories and methods of analysis that you've done elsewhere. And not just those students, also those taking other different types of degrees. This module allows you to apply an awful lot of your existing knowledge. And also, of course, it allows you to produce a portfolio of journalism and media related writing that you can use when you're applying for jobs or for further education opportunities, you know, whether it's a postgraduate qualification in journalism or a master's degree. So one of the things that you need to really bear in mind, and I am going to sort of break this down a bit more in a moment when we look at the learning outcomes, is that this module is absolutely, or has at its heart, absolutely the impact of new media. So this is the digital world and that notion of multimodality. So that means that everything that you've produced for this module, and certainly all of those things that you're going to have in your assignment, will really reflect this knowledge and understanding that we live in a digital world. And also that there is a very big difference between digital and traditional print. So you'll also have already done this, you will have already carried out your research. Now it says, for example, using Canterbury and its environs as your news area, collecting information, arranging and carrying out relevant interviews and writing up projects. Now, of course, because we've been in lockdown and, you know, we're living through this terrible time at the moment, it's not been possible for you to get out and about and to carry out face-to-face interviews or to go and do that sort of research that actually involves you going to a place. However, you have already done this. You've already done all of the research, and that research has been in lots of different forms. And again, we will have a look at this in one of the later slides because, as I say, you've already done this. So this is the assessment. You provide and submit a portfolio of original journalism. So this is not news journalism, but features journalism. And that absolutely allows you to demonstrate your ability to use language and, you know, the ability to structure your writing, but very much with a target audience in mind. So you have known who you were writing for. So that's the first assignment that comes in on the 9th of April. And then the second assignment that comes in, I think it's the 9th of May, but certainly it's the first week back in May. It's this critical commentary that actually reflects upon your understanding and how all of that understanding of discourse, stylistic, cultural theory, all of that has actually affected what you've written. In other words, it's you proving that you know what you're doing. So what does all of that mean? So that's the module aims. What do they actually mean? So this impact of new media, as I've said, it's this arrival of the digital revolution. And, this is something that has been covered extensively in the lecture videos, but also in the recommended reading for this module. And also we've talked about it a lot in the seminars. So you already know that we use different modes to communicate. We don't just communicate in text. Writing in the media is no longer just a series of pieces of writing. That whole notion of text writing, that whole notion of writing in the same way that whole notion of reading. Reading and writing have both changed and they have expanded. It is no longer just decoding words, text. It's actually far more than that. When we read something, we read the colours, we read the typefaces, the fonts, we read the layout. It's not just the words that we read pictures, we read visual images. So, it's all of those things. And, it may well be with particularly some of the things that you've posted on or, put up and had published on our Medium publication, it may well be moving images and sound too. Now, how do you actually show that in a print layout in your first assignment? Well, things like moving images and sound can easily be accessed through print in two different ways. First of all, you can actually represent it by having a web address that the reader can go to. Now, if you're not sure that, if the web address is perhaps complicated, you might want to use something like tinyURL or bit.ly that will actually cut it down and make it easier to find. Or you may want to use something like a QR code. And QR codes are completely free of charge. And you've probably already seen them in newspapers and magazines and posters, around the place. And these are little square images that have sort of like dots or smaller squares within them. And if you put your mobile phone's QR code reader, and an awful lot of mobile phones either have these already installed or you can download them free of charge, but it allows access to your camera. You hold that up to the QR code that you can see, and then instantly you are taken to the relevant website. So it's a really, really easy way to actually take people where you want them to see moving images or to hear sound, or to go and read something more perhaps that's actually on a web page and not just in print. So you'll also carry out your own research. So this, as I said, has not been perhaps as straightforward as it has been in the past because we're living in lockdown and the pandemic, but you've already done lots of that research. You have done background research when you've been writing pieces. You've gone and read articles, perhaps industry articles or journalistic articles or research pieces from academics, all about particular subjects, that has allowed you to have new ideas on things. And if you remember a few weeks back, one of the writing tasks was to write a piece based upon academic research. So if you hadn't already researched a lot of the pieces that you've been writing, you were specifically guided towards it in that week. But you've also hopefully been looking at magazines and newspapers and websites to get hints, tips, ideas of how to put pieces together, but also to think about magazine layout styles, and how this whole thing of producing something for an audience, how it's actually done. Now, for interviews, again, it was recommended only last week that you have a go at interviewing somebody if you haven't already done it. You may well have already had a go at this. So, that sort of thing you've already done. You've maybe already been out and taken photographs, or taken photographs maybe in your home that actually represent, maybe you wrote a piece about baking, or something to do with where you live, or something like that. You already have done a lot of this research. You will have already looked into things, even if it was actually watching a film, or listening to an album, or reading a book, or watching a TV show. You've tried these things so that you could write about them. That all constitutes research, because you were watching them, listening to them, reading them, doing the thing, perhaps, yes, for your own enjoyment, but as part of doing the thing, you suddenly, perhaps it occurred to you, this would make a really good article. So, that was the research. So, what's the assessment for this module? Well, it's 100% coursework, there is no exam, and it's in 3 parts. The first, which is due in a week on Friday, the 9th of April, is 2 or 3 pieces of original writing. So that's the articles that you have been writing. And they aren't 1,500 words each, that is 1,500 words in total. So that's why it's 2 or 3 pieces of original writing. Now, the 3 pieces or the 2 pieces do not need to be of equal length. They just need to add up to 1,500 words. So it could be that you have a piece that's maybe a long form piece that's 1,200 words, and alongside that you have something that's quite short, that's maybe a very quick review, or even a quick listicle that's mainly a photo essay, which is only 300 words, or even shorter. It's possible to do that, to have a long piece with a short piece. Or alternatively, it might be 3 pieces, each of 500 words. However you make up that 1,500 words doesn't matter, it's up to you. But what you need to be doing is choosing pieces that first reflect the best of your writing and layout, and all of those other things that you've been thinking about, that multimodality and how we communicate in multiple different modes. But also what you should be thinking about with those 2 or 3 pieces is having things that you can then talk about in the second assignment. That critical commentary, which is an analysis of your own writing. And as I've said, that word writing needs to be taken at its fullest contemporary understanding, which is not just the mode of text on a page, but actually image, colour, layout, typeface, all of those different things. So you want for that critical commentary to have lots to discuss based upon the pieces that you submitted in assignment 1, but it might also be that in that critical commentary you also discuss perhaps your entire magazine style portfolio that's in assignment 3. So it could be that if you particularly want to talk about how multimodality and layout was really key for the reader, and therefore the way that you as the writer put it together, you would be then talking about the whole portfolio, but you might be focusing specifically on one piece perhaps that is in assignment 1. Essentially, these assignments and how you put them together are very much up to you, because this module is aimed at taking you from being an undergrad to a postgrad and selecting which things you want to emphasize in the same way that you've been doing for those of you that have been doing in your dissertations. It's about creating something that is absolutely reliant upon you as a new professional, and this assignment, or these assignments rather, are also aimed at you then having something that you can show to future universities if you want to go and do further qualifications, or to show editors or potential employers. So it's, as I've said, it's very much about pushing you on into the professional world of work, the professional media world, or providing you with something that will actually help you to go into the next stage of an academic career. So let's break down each of those assignments. So this is the first one that you will be submitting in 10 days time, 11 days time, something like that. So as it's this 2 or 3 pieces, but totaling no more than 1,500 words. Now, of course, I'm not going to be chasing anybody or, docking points if somebody has gone over that 1,500 words by, I don't know, 10, 15 words or so. But I would normally, I know that you are given that 10% leeway either way. I would absolutely, for your own benefit, try to hit 1,500 words as closely as possible. And the reason why I'm saying that, and this absolutely is for your own benefit, is because if you end up at some point working for a print magazine or newspaper, or even producing something like a flyer or a leaflet for an employer, the ability to hit a particular word count is an incredibly useful skill, because if you have to produce something for print, that's fixed. It's not with the digimodern world, as you saw if you had a read of Alan Kirby and his book on digimodernism. He talks about digimodernism being about fluid and fluid bound, which means that actually, there isn't necessarily a word count at all when you have something online. Web pages can be as long as you like. You can keep scrolling down. But if you are writing for print, it's fixed. You have a certain number of pages that have to be filled. Those pages are a particular size and they will fit a certain number of characters or a certain number of words. And if you go over that, it's not all going to appear. So, if you can actually nail that 1,500 words, you can then talk about that if you're applying for a job that involves you doing anything that's print related, because you can say, we had to do that for one of the assignments and I hit 1,500 words. And in fact, you can go and see how I did that and how my entire article fitted into 2 pages or 3 pages or 4 pages for the layout, because here it is, and you provide then your link to your final articles in that magazine style portfolio that you do for assignment 3 on issue.com. So I also strongly recommend that you turn those 2 or 3 pieces into a print style magazine layout now. You could submit the raw Word document with just the text and maybe add in a picture or 2, so it's very similar to the pieces that you've got on Medium. You could upload that, but you will be absolutely doing yourself no favours, because you're not then showing that you have an awareness that print is different from digital. And I can go and see your articles on Medium where they're already laid out for the digital. But this allows you to prove that you have that awareness that print is different from digital, and it also allows you to then talk about in assignment 2 how you know it's different. So I really recommend you use something like Canva, because it's free and it's actually really easy to use. So I've also said there that you may want to use 2 or 3 pieces that you've already had published on Medium. And that could be when you select 2 or 3 pieces, even if it's just 2 pieces, you might find that maybe that comes to 1,600 words. You can copy the pieces from Medium and then edit them. And that doesn't mean you take them down from Medium. It means that there is a slightly different version on Medium. And in fact, you can even put into that magazine layout, maybe down at the bottom somewhere, this article also appeared online, and then you provide a QR code or a web address. So actually, your reader can go and have a look at the longer version online. And, you have probably seen riders written like that on an awful lot of in newspapers. You know, they will often say, and in fact, the University of Kent website has that. Whenever they have press releases, they will often say in the press release down at the bottom, an earlier version or a longer version of this is also available here. That's entirely appropriate. So, you know, you could do that, and then it means that you get sort of an extra read, because there's the longer version, and here's the shorter version that's just for print. You know, and it sort of fits into that 1500 words. So it could be something that's already on Medium. Equally, you may want to write something completely new. And it may be that what you submit for this first assignment, those 2 or 3 pieces, could be all themed. It could be that you decide that you want to write a food magazine, for example. And if you look through previous years' magazines on issue.com, you will see that a couple of years ago somebody wrote an absolutely beautiful food magazine that was, I think it might have had not just recipes, but also there might have been a restaurant review or 2 in there as well. So, you know, if you want to do a magazine in the style of something like the Good Food magazine, or a magazine focused on sport, or student life, or whatever you're really interested in, and have all of the pieces themed to that, and you decide that you want to have 2 of those pieces or 3 of those pieces as part of this first assignment, you can absolutely do that. So if you want to write something completely new, you can. That is your decision. As I said earlier, this assignment is absolutely, or this whole assessment for this module is absolutely about you tailoring it to what you need for your first job, or maybe your second job, or you know, for going on and doing further qualifications. It's entirely up to you. Make it work for you. So as the second column says there, make sure that your articles are uploaded to Turnitin as a single document. Turnitin will only, for this module and for this particular assignment, you can only submit a single document. And I absolutely recommend a PDF. Yes, it is possible to use Word, but as I've said, that's really doing yourself no favours if you just leave it in Word layout. Because there is so much more that you could do. But also, if you leave it as a Word document, what will happen is that Word adapts depending on the screen size that's being used and the resolution of that screen. And that means that if you've got photographs or other types of images and columns and so on, they will not be the same on your screen as they are on my screen. For lots of different reasons. You know, I might have, my screen size might be different, my resolution might be different, and also, you know, I'm using a Mac, so it means that it will look different. And again, that means that I'm not seeing what you intended. So if you save it as a PDF, so if you do feel that you have to use Word, and as I've said, I really recommend that you don't. Instead, you know, by all means write the thing in Word, but then cut and paste the text into something like Canva. You know, allow it to have a beautiful layout, allow it to look like a magazine page, and there are plenty of free templates on Canva that you can use. There is absolutely no reason for you to spend a single penny, although you may want to decide that you actually want to use the paid for version of Canva, because you get 30 days free with the Canva Pro. And you may want to give that a go and, you know, sort of switch off the payment for it before the month is up. So, you know, you might want to do that, but equally there's no reason why you can't do it completely with the free version. And the great thing about Canva is it will allow you to download a free PDF of your magazine layout. You know, so it might be that your assignment is not actually 3 single pages or 2 single pages, could end up being maybe 6 pages, you know, depending on what your articles are and the sort of layouts that you've gone for. You know, do allow your articles to have plenty of white space. That's incredibly important on screen, but it's also really important for print too. And it's also very very contemporary. Because we've got so used to reading things on a screen, we expect to see that same sort of space when we're reading things, even in print. So those newspapers and magazines that don't give you lots of space, particularly magazines, less so than newspapers, but those magazines that cram lots of text onto a page are looking more and more dated and more contemporary, and particularly those sort of very stylish magazines that only come out maybe once a year or twice a year, they that are very much sort of like a coffee table book. They tend to have lots and lots of space and lots of large images that are beautiful. And it's very much a part of your sort of visual enjoyment and understanding, of course. And that there's no reason why communication can't be pleasurable. So it's absolutely doing all of that. The other reason why I'm recommending that you have them turned into this assignment turned into professional looking magazine layouts is because you can then reuse them for that final assessment, that final assignment number 3. And as I've said, it then gives you something more to discuss in that critical commentary, which we're going to look at next. Okay, so there is actually a separate video just on the critical commentary, which I will also upload so you can have a look at that. But don't forget that there are previous years' critical commentaries that are all available on Moodle. So do have a look at those. The students that wrote them last year have all given their permission for you to be able to read them. So this assignment 2, this comes in May, so after the Easter break and when term starts back again. It's a 1,500 word assignment again, and it's a critical commentary that's an analysis of your own writing. Now, this is closest to an academic essay, so it's far, far closer to the sorts of things that you are very familiar over the previous 3 years with writing. So you will be writing this analysis of your own articles with reference to one or more of the critical frameworks that we've discussed on this module. So this is where the lecture videos come in. And of course, you will have access to all of those lecture videos, the whole of the module on Moodle. You have access to that certainly until the end of next term, I think. But what I would recommend is that if you want to download any of the articles or anything else on there that you think will be useful for you in the future, absolutely download it. And in fact, I would say that about any of your modules, and I think you now have access to all your previous year's Moodle pages too. If you don't, you can get it, or you can certainly look at last year's Moodle and so on, and it is easy to have a look at that. One thing I would say though is that do download your previous assignments, because you may not think it now, but any assignments that you've produced for your degree, you of course have, you're entitled to access them and download them, not least of all so that you can read the comments, but also because it could be that maybe a year, 2, 3, 5 years down the road, you might think to yourself, I seem to remember writing an essay on something about that. And in fact, I may have mentioned this in seminars, but only a couple of weeks ago I was contacted by somebody who is now a radio producer for Radio Kent, who took this module some years ago, and there was a news article about I can't even remember the name of the company, but Unilever. Unilever dropped the word normal from an awful lot of their advertising, for beauty products and cosmetics. And the producer of the BBC radio, local radio show, contacted me because he remembered that I talked about branding. and how important words are. We're in branding, so he contacted me because it was something we'd covered in this module, and also in language and media as well. So this is why I'm saying it's really important for you to maybe download an awful lot of the information that is there. You've paid an awful lot of money for this information. It is all there for you. Hold on to it. And don't just leave it saved on your Kent account, because you, of course, don't have access to all of your Kent account once you graduate. Yes, you'll be given a Kent for Life email address, but I would really recommend that you use somewhere else than something else. There are plenty of free websites that will give you free cloud space. Whether it's Dropbox or similar. There are lots of different, like OneDrive or SkyDrive or whatever they're calling themselves now. There are lots of different places that you can save that stuff. Do it. Anyway, assignment 2. So there is another video that goes through all of this, but very quickly, essentially, in your introduction, establish what you're going to be analysing. So this means, as it says in the example, you might have an opening paragraph that is something along the lines of, this commentary will analyse, and then you talk about the article names and perhaps the name of your issue publication, so the third assignment. So it might be that you're going to talk about all of those, but with reference to, and that's where you actually say whether you're going to be looking at the cultural contexts, so that's modernism, postmodernism, digimodernism, or narratology, or multimodality. And of course, if you're going to be talking about multimodality, and in fact, even if you're going to be talking about any of the others, you may need some reference to semiotics. But multimodality in particular, you will need to reference semiotics. And the lecture last week covered semiotics to the extent that you need it for this module. Now, remember, semiotics is essentially the study of signs. So it's very much about using semiotics to unpick why particular colours, layouts, fonts, images, and so on have been used, what they mean. So in the way that you're looking at this page, of this presentation, and you can see that there is a pink box in the top left, and it's got a brown sort of stripe along the bottom of it that implies that this has been like a post-it note that's stuck down, and the brown is actually a shadow. Well, it's not a shadow because this is a flat screen, so it's not something that's standing up. This is not a post-it note that's been stuck on there, but that's what is implied. And the sort of the pink heavier shape that's on the left hand side is supposed to imply a bulldog clip of something sort of being clipped to this and held down. And the typeface that's been used along the top, this handwritten typeface that says assignment 2, is supposed to imply just that this is handwritten, that this is something that is perhaps has been made, as I say, by hand. It's using post-it notes, it's using bulldog clips, and as I say, it's been written by hand. And in fact, the whole of this, the theme used in this particular presentation is very much a sort of school educational type theme, but it's got these sort of pink colours, and I've stuck with that partly because it appealed, but also it's quite appropriate for this time of year, Easter and New Life and all the rest of it. So that unpicking all of that is using semiotics. That's essentially what semiotics is. As I say, it's a study of signs. It's unpicking. What does that mean when we have those colours, that typeface, and so on and so forth? So so that's what the reference is with reference to those different theories. And then the last thing you might say in your introduction is this area of theory will be used in conjunction with, and then that's where you'll actually talk about which theorists. So if it's multimodality, you might talk about Günter Kress. He's in the reading. You might talk about Roland Barthes. Again, it's in the reading list. Or you might talk about narratology, and you might specifically reference a narratologist. And it might be that you reference David Herman, who wrote The Elements of Narrative. So, depending on what particular aspect you're going to look at, and it might not just be a single aspect. You might decide actually you want to analyse your assignments, that first assignment, those articles, and your issue publication. You might actually want to analyse them using a variety of different approaches. You might want to approach it from the point of view of narratology and multimodality and how those two work together. It's entirely up to you. Go and have a look at the previous year's critical commentaries, and then you'll get an idea of how others have approached this and how they've done it very successfully. So then you'll go on and as it says, you'll summarise why these particular things are relevant to your creative submission. And that's where you then need to link it to contemporary professional practice within the media. And that sounds very complex, but as it says, it's really simple. In other words, you've written or presented the piece like this because that's what Vogue or GQ or Chat Magazine or The Economist does. So, it's absolutely, not only does Roland Barthes, Gunter Kress and David Herman say this is the way that we should write a piece and lay it out and so on, but also that's what Vogue does, and that's that's where my article was intended. It was aimed at that particular publication with their particular demographic readership. So it's absolutely tying the real life application back to the theory that's the academic theory that you've been studying. So all of the relevant theory can be found in the read sections on Moodle, and hopefully you've been keeping up with that and reading them each week. I've tried to ensure that each week the reading was never too heavy, so there's been quite a mix of academic theory and industry theory. But if you want to have a look at them all together, they're not just in the read sections on Moodle, where obviously they're divided week by week and whatever we were looking at, that particular theme, but you can also have a look at them in the reading list that's on the library website. And again, there is a link to that reading list on Moodle. But if you go to the Kent Library website, you can look at all the reading lists. And if you go and have a look at LL530 for this year, you'll see that it's laid out week by week, and it says exactly what the title was for that week, and it all corresponds to Moodle. So the contemporary professional practice, so this is the stuff where it's what maybe Reuters has said, or maybe various different media outlets like Newzoo. They produce an awful lot of like social media figures, facts and figures and stats. That's the sort of stuff, again, that has been in the read sections on Moodle. Some of these are actually articles that were on Medium. Where you've had somebody who's perhaps a social media expert, maybe an expert in how Google Analytics works or how Google Keywords works. And again, we've looked at these over the weeks. So if you go back and have a look at your notes, but also go and have a look at the read sections on Moodle, everything is there, absolutely everything. So assignment 3, and again this comes in May after the Easter break, this is your portfolio, and there is no word count for that, but absolutely what you're doing is showing that you've got an awareness of how print layout works and how it's different from digital layout. So it's not going to be identical to your Medium pieces that, on our Writing in the Media up online. It may be they're the same articles, but actually you have changed them and repurposed them for a print layout. So it's that awareness that the digital is generally read on a mobile phone screen and is generally single column, simple layout, and certainly with medium white background, same typeface, same font, throughout. Whereas print magazines are obviously produced in a totally different way. They have multiple columns, and the text is often very much spread out, multiple images, different typefaces, background colours, and so on. So the portfolio should contain those pieces that you submit for assignment one, but they don't have to, but they should, because it just makes your life a lot easier to repurpose them and reuse them in that final assignment. And you're not going to get done for plagiarism, because that final assignment, assignment 3, this magazine style portfolio, is not put through Turnitin. Instead, you upload it when you've made your portfolio that may be maybe 12 pages, it may be 20 pages, it could be 30 pages long. It's entirely up to you how long your magazine portfolio is, how long it is, but you upload it to issue.com. And you can get an account on Issue just using existing email addresses. So you could use your Kent one, for example, or existing social media. So it's very easy to just sign up, and you then upload a single PDF. And if you use something like Canva, you will already have the start of that anyway. And when you've uploaded it, you're given the address of where your magazine portfolio appears, and that address, that web address, you then copy and you put it into, there's a Dropbox on Moodle that will allow you just to put that in, and then that means that I can go and have a look. And what I do is I collate all of those magazines as they come in. I collate them under LL530 2021, and you'll then be able to see everybody else's as well. So it can contain the pieces, or it should contain the pieces you submit for assignment 1. But if you decide that the pieces you want in assignment 1 are maybe, I don't know, maybe one review and maybe an opinion piece, and they're not on subjects that you want to have your whole portfolio for assignment 3 focused on, then absolutely you don't have to include them, but I would recommend that you do. So it can also contain all the pieces that you've written for Medium, every single one, if you like. It can also contain an entirely new set of pieces written to a theme. So it could be a food magazine, a sports magazine, travel, whatever. It's entirely up to you. It doesn't have to be written to a theme. It could just be all the pieces you've written for this module. It is up to you. These are absolutely, the whole of the assessment for this module is absolutely up to you to show what you can do. And that means it's also about you making decisions, as to what your best work has been, what the best way to lay these out, what that is, and the best way to discuss these pieces in terms of the theory, whether it's academic or industry. So it's absolutely up to you what you put in, so long as they meet the word count and the very sort of broad guidelines, then that will be fine. And if you want to talk about this more, of course I'm always available on in my office hour, although I'm saying that, but of course my office hour next week falls on bank holiday Monday, so obviously there won't be an office hour because it's a bank holiday, so the university is closed. But next week is reading week, or essay writing week, as the last week of the term, and I will be available on Wednesday in our usual assignment seminar slots, but I will also be available on Thursday. I won't be available on Tuesday, but I'm going to be sending around an email to everyone. So if you want to book in to see me next week on Wednesday or Thursday, you can. And as I say, it'll be 3 hours I'll be, well, actually 4, because I'll also do my office hour. So I will be available for plenty of time over those 2 days if you want to talk to me. Once term has ended, unless you have a really massive wobble about something, then, really you are on your own. So absolutely take the opportunity next week if you want to talk through any of your assignments. Now, for this final bit, the assignment 3, the magazine style portfolio, as I've already said, use Canva. That would be my first choice because it's free and it's very easy to use. And I don't think you'll run into any problems if you use one of their templates. You might want to use Scribus. It's free, open source. You download it, and it's open source, so that means that you download it as you would any other piece of software, but you can get it from lots of different places, and people keep on updating it, and it's very, very similar to InDesign, which is Adobe's InDesign, which is the industry standard. And as I've said there, it's expensive. Adobe's InDesign is very expensive and it's very complicated. But that's what all of those big glossy magazines and an awful lot of newspapers use for their layouts and designs. Scribus is like the open source version, so it's not got perhaps as many whistles and bells, but it's pretty much the same as InDesign. You can also, of course, use Microsoft Publisher, and you should all find that very easy to use because you are all familiar with Microsoft's, all of their software, because it's Microsoft Word is the standard. It is also possible to do all of these layouts in Word, but as I've already said, it's a lot harder. It's a lot more complicated because Word isn't designed for that. So I would absolutely use Canva. A lot of you have already started using it to produce sort of shareables, those sort of single page, like a poster, that sort of thing. And those of you that did poster presentations for last week's ELL conference, a lot of you had used Canva for that. It's simple, it's easy, and it's free. So I would recommend doing that, and it will allow you to have a multiple page magazine, and you can keep on adding as many pages as you like. So absolutely, I would recommend using Canva because it's easy and looks professional. So, and there is where we're finished. And I bet you're thinking, hang on a moment, why has it suddenly gone into a video? That's because, as I said at the beginning, I've used Canva and one of their presentation downloads because I wanted to try it out for myself. So that's the end of the presentation, and that was a bit of a shock, suddenly seeing a video full of kids. But yeah, that's Canva. Right, so that's us done with this, but I will, there'll also be another video uploaded shortly that will just go through assignment 2, the critical commentary. Okay, so that's us done, and this will appear on Moodle, and I'll also upload it to YouTube, despite the sort of strange errors in it. And I will see you in seminars this week.